Hello, office hours, August 11th. Does anyone want to try and throw another question on here? I'm not sure we'll get to it. This is going to take a lot of time. No one? All right. How to submit a pull request. Oh, you got one?
Yeah. I was going to actually submit some code, but I have a question on how much more we, like another way to use filters to compare refactoring.
Great. Okay. Who had this question about submitting a pull request for a code review? You did. Okay. So what kind of code review do you mean? Just any old code review?
Yeah, so this one time I was trying to talk to one of the coaches to do my code review, and she said, it'll be better if you can sort of create a pull request so that I can look at your code and make comments there.
Sure.
Yeah.
That is a really nice feature of GitHub, is to like look at a pull request and be able to do like inline comments. But often we're just creating code inside of a repository, and we're not actually forking another repo and actually making a suggested change via a pull request. So just creating a pull request like kind of against your own code is kind of an annoying chore. There's like several steps to it. It might actually be better for them to just for you to just give them your repo and ask them to make a pull request against your repo, giving comments that way. But if you really need to do this, I can show you how to do it. It's kind of an annoying chore, but let's say I've just got some module I'm working on, and I've got some code in here, right? And I want, oops. Why? There we go. So I've got some code in here. How about we just do this? Great. So, and then I'm going to commit this code. Git init, git add, git commit. My first commit. So I'll just put this on GitHub. All right, so
did you just create a repository from the terminal?
I did, yeah. If you want to be able to do that, you need a command called hub, which like wraps around the GitHub command. So if you look, GitHub created a command called hub, which wraps around the git command, which gives it GitHub features. So check out that. Just Google hub for GitHub, and it'll show you how to set that up. And it also lets you like go straight to GitHub. So cool. So I just created this repo on GitHub. Here's my code, right? So now how do I make a pull request? Like you have to have branches to compare to make a pull request, right? And so what we really want, if I want to show you all of my code, is I want to pull request against like an empty branch. Is basically how you would do it, right? So normally this would be a fork of someone else's code, and I'd make changes, and then I would suggest those changes via pull request. But since we're not actually doing that, we don't have two repositories, we have to sort of make a pull request against ourselves. So one way you can do that is create an empty branch. So you can check out a new branch with this -- orphan thing. So you check out a new branch, and I'll just call it empty. Oh, and this is just from the copy, -- orphan empty. So now I have no commits, right? And now I'm going to get push to origin empty. Does that work? No. How do I push up a new empty branch? Yeah, you can't push no commits though.
You're right.
So I'm just gonna go. See, this is a chore, and I'd have to write down this like process for you. So I made a branch with get checkout empty, or get checkout -- orphan. That makes an empty branch. Now I'm gonna commit with -- allow empty commit. Oh, -m. Great, so now I have one commit even though it's empty. Will it let me push it now?
So that's what it is. So yeah, if there's already information, I make a copy of that information here. So then I can
Okay, so now, and I'm winging this. I don't do this all the time, and it's really weird. But I'll make a new pull request where the base is the empty branch, and we're comparing it to master. Oh, maybe it needs to be the other way around. No. And it doesn't even want to compare these two things either way. So this seems like such a really kind of hacky way to just get a pull request. What I would rather folks do is, like, if I just give you the repo that I'm working on, you can fork that repo and then just go make whatever changes you want and put comments in there. Like, you can even do it locally, and then just submit a pull request back to the author with that you don't intend for them to commit, but as a way for them to leave comments. Yeah.
Is that what we should do as coaches? Because I like for people to make a pull request that I can comment on.
I know, but like this, it's just how's it? Well, I don't know of a good way to do it. You know what I mean?
Well, once they've done work and made submits, then push the branch.
Yeah, but that's not going to make you a pull request though.
And then you do a pull request inside the repo that you're in.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to do that now, right? Like, I just want to show you my code, right? So I wrote this code. I've got it up on GitHub,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to make a pull request.
Are you on the other branch?
Yeah, so I hit new pull request, and then how do I do it?
No, go back.
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, compare pull requests.
Yeah, this is because of that new empty branch I made. And it shows no changes when I compare empty to master, even though there's stuff on master and there's nothing on the empty branch. So,
Because there's nothing wrong with the branch. You get to reverse the two.
okay, I'll swap them. I tried this.
I tried to.
I don't. Yeah, it's not doing it. So I don't have a good answer to this. Maybe there's a way, and I can poke around and try to figure out like a better way. We used to have a way in the guide on how to make an empty branch and then make a PR against it, and I think it was more complicated than this.
Like your initial edit, you do whatever work it is, and you're like, hey, I've done some work. Push that up to GitHub and like do a pull request. I don't know what happened, but I can walk people through it when they're.
How do we do it? Walk me through it.
But why make it into branch? Why doesn't maybe like make a README file?
So here, look, I've got. So look, I've got my master branch. It has one commit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Check out to the other branch.
And then if I check out the empty branch, it also has one commit, but it just has nothing in it. Like, there's nothing here. Whereas if I check out master, there is stuff here.
Well, what? You didn't do any work on your empty branch?
No.
Do some work on your empty branch. That's what I mean. Once you've done work on your branch.
Right. Okay, so
That's what I mean.
Right, sure. But everyone in phase one, the plan is that y'all only need to know how to make commits and push them up and not make branches and not do any of that stuff. So it's just like commit, save, push,
Okay.
commit, save, push, right? So if you're getting a review, that code is there. It just doesn't give you a convenient way to comment on their code.
Mm-hmm.
So I still think it'd be easier for the coaches to just fork that repo,
Okay.
do an inline pull request, right? So if I
So
were
we
to,
do a pull request.
yeah, so let me
Okay.
go. So let me show you how I would do that. If I just go to like, I'll go to one of the Guildcrafts repos.
So it's not, I need it to actually be
I know how to make the.
Oh, I know. I just want to show. So like, let's say this was the repo, right?
You want to do like a review on like
Yeah.
my SQL. It's really short. Did you want to see how you would do it?
He's saying it should be the coach's responsibility.
I think it'd be easier to just do this. If this is your code, this is your repo, and you give it to a coach, the coach can fork the repo. I'll fork it to my personal account,
Oh, that's right.
and then I can create a new pull request, I think, and start editing files. How do we do that? So actually, what I would do is I would just go start looking at these files, and if I saw one and I wanted to make a comment on it, I could just edit this and be like, and I can leave comments in here. and then I can create a new branch, you know. And now I've got a pull request of just me sending back comments. It's not as good, but it's a way for us to do that. I can't think of a better way though. Anyway,
you're the administrator, right? If you fork it, you make a copy of it, and you own that.
You own the fork, right? Yeah.
So you're sending a pull request to yourself?
No, I'm the coach in this example. So the coach would make a pull request of their review changes back to the original author. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's a decent way to do it. Otherwise, if we can think of like a little script we can write that makes a PR or something. Okay, great.
Okay.
But maybe we can make it a script.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
So yeah, I don't have a good answer. Sorry. Delete this repository.
And this works, and it does what it's supposed to.
But if I wait until after
All right.
this object has a link.
I would use things.
What's the difference between requiring a file and requiring a module? Well, so
Yeah, I'll use a callback, right? So we're using callback.
if we have a node project,
I can just say, hey, you can have a link.
and let's say we npm install like Express. And then we have like an app.js, and then let's say we have like a routes.js. So here's my application. I've got an app.js. I'm going to require two things, both things that you asked about. This is a module, and this is a file. So I think in the node documentation, from what I've read, it considers these both to be modules. But this Express is not a path. It's a name of a module. It's the name of the Express node module, whereas this is a relative path to a particular file. However, I think they both work the same. The difference is /routes is going to resolve to this. So if I have module.exports equals my router, and you know what. Something like that, I think is how it works. Anyway, so forgetting about Express, like we're exporting a router from this file, right? So we define a thing and we export it. And so whatever object is the exports object is what we get from here. So that's the same as if we looked in the node modules Express folder and we look at the package JSON file. It should have, oh, it doesn't have. Okay, sometimes it'll have a main entry in there determining which file is the default file, but you can see it also has an index.js. So when I require Express, it looks in node modules for Express, and then anytime in node you require a directory, it'll look for an index.js in that directory. So,
can you repeat what you just said?
Sure. So when I require Express, Node knows this isn't a path because it doesn't have any slashes in it, and so it looks in, and you don't see this here because my editor hides it, but in Node modules, it's going to look in Node modules, and in here is the Express node package. So when I require Express, it's a directory, so it's going to require the index.js, or this could be called whatever.js, and then there'd be an entry in the package JSON file saying the main file for this package is whatever.js.
Can you put an path for the file? Or?
Yeah, but you don't want to. You could, but your node modules could live in a whole bunch of different places. And it would just be extra information you don't need. Now you could do an absolute path to get just a normal file, but anything from node modules?
No, I'm not for the file.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, it would be weird because packages generally don't know where they're going to live whenever they're used in different places, so absolute paths probably wouldn't be consistent enough to be useful. you'd probably want to derive a relative path into an absolute path, like programmatically. Yes.
So Express, it's a package, right?
Express is a node package, yep.
Is that the other word for it's a library or like it's
Yeah, pretty much. It's a publishable library, sure. Yeah.
So line 1 and 2 is pretty much the same. So in line 1, we're requiring something that we downloaded off the internet, and on line 2, we're requiring something that we wrote ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Another way is this is a node module that's in the node modules directory, and this is just some JavaScript file that we know the path to. But after we resolve what those things are, then the loading part is the same.
So in JavaScript, are the terms library and framework interchangeable, or do they mean two separate distinct things?
I don't think the word framework is specific to JavaScript in any way. The word framework is like many terms, it's a little bit of an ambiguous term, but a framework, in my mind, just means some boilerplate code or some general utility code to help you sort of get started with the problem that you're trying to solve, right? So if you want to make wooden chairs for a living, I can sell you a shop with all the tools and all the stuff and like everything ready for you to make the kind of chairs you want to make. That would be a framework analogy, right? So we give you almost everything you need. Maybe you need to go buy some special sandpaper or something, but like you get pretty much everything you need. So for something like Rails in the Ruby world, Rails is very much a massive kitchen sink framework, right? It tries to do and be everything you need. Express you could call a framework, although it's much more of a specialized tool, right? It's much more of like a table saw than it is like a framework, right? It really has one problem and it solves that problem well, and if you need other stuff, there's other tools for that. But there's other things in the node world. There's one called Grails, which is I think very much trying to be a clone of Rails in the node world, and there's Keystone JS. There's a bunch of other frameworks that are trying to do like data persistence and modeling and handling requests and rendering views, and all that's all put together for you, right? That would be a framework in my mind.
I see. So basically, because you actually have to import a lot of modules, you do extra stuff with Express. It works more like a library. It behaves more like
yeah, Express is really like a special tool, and there's all these tools that kind of play nice with it and bolt onto it and stuff, but you really, if you're making Express apps, you really have to wire everything up together. It's like the kit car of web development, right? Like it's going to give you the chassis or something, but you got to get your own wheels, that kind of thing.
You were just moving around that dictionary really well. What's the command to like jump words and highlight words like that?
Oh yeah, let's put that on the list.
Oh, it's
all right. Is this good? You good on this?
Oh yeah, that's pretty clear. Thank you.
Great. This is yours too, using the Chrome debugger?
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask, like, when we're dealing with something that has HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and say our JavaScript is doing some weird stuff. So how do we, let's say I'm making something like a game, and how do I sort of pause the game and see what the values of the variable is at that point in time?
All right, I'll try to make something really quick.
And if it's
that is so cool. So you could just touch 3 files at once if you put it in the curly.
The curlies is an expando bash thing that expands to it just expands things out.
Whoa, thank you.
Yeah.
Isn't there like a post and pre thing going on there?
What now?
I just looked at it real briefly. I remember having like a post and pre something or other.
What has a post and a pre?
Brace expansion?
Oh, I mean, this index, I guess. I haven't read that, but this is probably the pre part, right?
Like, oh, and then you made HTML.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Cool. Sweet. We'll make a fake game, and let's get some script here.
Hey Jared.
Yes.
While you're doing this, I was looking up like Google's HTML and CSS recommended style guide.
Yeah.
And they say like you should leave off optional tags to make the HTML file smaller. So like you don't actually have to put like, you know, head and body and HTML because it's like it will recognize that you know, that's where you want to put it.
If you want to hyper optimize, that's something that I would do toward the end. I'm going to do things the way the spec requires just because it's more clear. But like, if I was trying to shave every byte I could off of this because I'm like Google's homepage or something, then I would start looking into things like that. But optimization should never trump clarity. In my mind, I would much rather have my sites be 1 millisecond slower and my developers be, you know, 20 minutes faster. There's a trade-off there. You don't want to go too far in that direction, but I'd much rather be able to read things. Cool. But you're right. Like Yahoo at one point, like way long ago, was like, we don't need this shit, and they saved like you know, hundreds of megabytes a day or whatever because they weren't sending these unnecessarily closed tags. Cool. Okay, so let's say we have a game. What are we gonna do in this game? In this game, we are just going to increment this number in this button.
So you do the first pass.
All right, and then I'm just gonna put this down here.
Yeah. So it's basically I'm sorry. It's actually more than minimum and less than maximum and less than maximum.
All right, let's see if this works.
I'm trying to think.
All right, so it's logging every time I click there, right? So let's say we want to get the event.target.inner text.
So basically, there would be a second that would be built.
That makes sense.
Okay, so every time I click this, the number goes up, right? Okay, so now let's say there's some bug in this, right? We can do something like if the number is greater than 10, then debugger. You can also just put debugger in here every time, right? You can put debugger anywhere you want, but you can wrap it in a conditional like this. Okay, so when this page loads, this is just going to go until I get to the condition where I think something's a problem that I need to debug. So I go here. And now I can make this a little bit. So now it says paused in debugger up here at the top, and it's highlighted down here that I'm paused here. You can, on the right-hand side here, you can, where did that go? I'm used to there being something over there, but it won't open it. Huh, that's really weird. There's supposed to be like the call stack and all kinds of shit over there. I'm gonna start this over. Sources. There we go. Okay, I don't know why this wasn't here. So on the right here, you can see that we're paused in the debugger. And we can see the call stack. Right now the call stack's not very long. I can make that bigger to show you. But then you can also see your local scope has these 3 variables. And then you've got your global scope, which you could look at. So if we were to say like event, we could see that it's a mouse event. And it should be a click event. We can see that number is 11. We can see what this button is. That's interesting that this doesn't work. That should, oh, I know why that doesn't work. That's funny that that still calls that the local scope. I should have made this a normal function, but whatever, it doesn't matter. So you can see these little, you can come in here in the debugger and sort of start to debug this program. And then you can hit play. And if your condition ever happens again, you'll be paused in the debugger and you can be like, huh, why is the target of this event not what it's supposed to be? Or why is this number not what it's supposed to be, right? And start to debug things. And then just hit play.
This in this context of the browser, is this supposed to be a window, or is it like is it the type of value?
No. I mean, technically, the way I defined this function is an arrow function, which means this should have been the window, yeah. But it probably is just null, because arrow functions, I think, if they're not inheriting anything other than the global scope, I think they're null. I actually don't know, but I should have just made this a normal function. And now you can get this. Cool. So that's like not everything the debugger can do, but it's a bunch. So you can just put debugger wherever you want in your code. You can also do this. So you can also come in here and like go to the sources tab, find the JavaScript file, right? And then say, okay, anytime this code runs, go to the pause in the debugger, and you're setting a breakpoint. And so if I reload the page, that breakpoint's still there, and I press this, and I'm in the debugger. So I can now know every time someone presses this button or I press this button, I'll be paused in the debugger. Yeah.
So I tried to do a similar thing, and there was two kinds of operations, well, or steps that I could take. One was going into each function or just step on each line.
Yeah.
And I just got into like code that I have not written, so I just got into like JavaScript inner, like event code.
Yeah, you got into some code that you didn't write.
Yeah.
Sure.
But why is that?
Because you're debugging all around the call stack, right? So
kind of what I'm learning is the higher order functions I just have to know what the higher order function is.
So if we have all these functions and we just call A here, and then we want to get in the debugger here. So I press this. Oh, I'm going to turn this breakpoint off. So I press this, and now I'm in the debugger here, and you can see the call stack here. And I can walk down the call stack. Right? So for example, let's say I call A with 10, and then each one of these are going to take an N, and they're going to pass N plus 7 to all of these. Okay, so now now I hit this. I'm in this debugger here, and N is 31, right? If I go up to C, I can see that at that point N was 24, right? So I can walk up I can walk back the path that I took to get here. Sometimes stuff in this path is other libraries, a lot of the time, right? So if instead of using the built-in add event listener, if I was using jQuery, right? If I looked in my call stack here, part of that's going to be jQuery's code because it's the one that set up the click handler and is doing some middleman stuff, some boiler, I don't know, some work for us, right? So you might find that on the call stack here, you hit debugger and you ended up in somebody else's code. I have seen very rarely if you debug toward the end or the beginning. I think it's only ever happened toward the end of a function. It might actually start that debugging on the next line outside of the function, so up where it was called, but the next line down. I've seen that occasionally. So just try to experiment with different breakpoints. This hasn't happened to me in a long time, but I've had to sometimes be like, just for the sake of sanity, just come in here and do something like that, just to give some more. Just to give like a block around this. I might actually be conflating this knowledge with problems I've had in the Ruby debugger too, so I could be wrong about this, but if you're saying that you've had a problem where you're not quite breaking on the right line, give yourself more lines around it and kind of don't break just before the return. Maybe that'll help. I don't know. I've actually had really, really good luck and good consistent interactions with this Chrome Developer Tools debugger, so I really like it. And there's actually a way to debug your Node programs that are not running in a browser in this tool. And it'll like spawn a copy of Chrome, and you can look up how to do that. It's pretty cool. Is that enough on the debugger? Sweet. What's our next deal here? Encryption. What do you want to know about encryption?
Just setting up like a basic encrypted cookie for now.
Okay. So there's probably a million kinds of encryption, but there's two kinds of encryption that you need to care about. The first one is one-way hashing algorithms. It's kind of like an encryption. So a one-way hashing algorithm is set up so that you can take some string and turn it into another string that is consistent. So every time I give you the word frog, I'm going to get this other jumbled string out the other side, and that's going to consistently happen. But that algorithm is written in such a way so that you cannot go from the resulting string back to the original string. So you can give me frog, and I'll turn that into, ABCD 12.5, right? Some weird random string. But by having that randomish encrypted version, that hashed version of the original string, I can't get back to frog. And the reason that you want to be aware of that is because that's what we're going to do with passwords. Because when I give you my password, I actually don't want you to keep it, because then you have my password and somebody could steal it from you, and then they would know my password, right? What you're going to do instead is you're going to take that password, my password's frog, don't tell anybody, and hash it into using a one-way hashing algorithm and store that resulting hash in the database. Then next time when I come to log in, I'm going to give you frog, you're going to use that same hashing algorithm, and you're going to see that the results are the same. So that's how you're going to know that my password is correct. But at no point are you ever going to persist my password. So that's one kind of encryption you need, is a one-way hashing algorithm.
Is that also called salting your password?
Salting is a component of encryption. You may use a salt in a one-way hashing algorithm. I think you will. I think Bcrypt uses a salt. The salt is kind of like an extra bit of input to make the randomness even better. So if we were to write our own one-way hashing algorithm, whatever us group would come up with, probably within the next month of working on it, right, would be something that could be hackable by somebody who understood math and encryption better than we do, to the point where, like, if I know what the exact time is on your computer, I can kind of get closer to guessing what kind of randomness your computer is using. I'm not an expert in this, but there's a lot of vulnerabilities within, like, how do computers come up with randomness, and if it's predictable, then it's vulnerable. So the salt, and I'm a lay person, I could be getting this wrong, the salt, I believe, adds another secret piece of information that as long as nobody else knows, it adds to the strength of our our hashing, our encryption. It adds to it protects against certain kinds of attacks, and that's really where my knowledge ends on that.
Sure. And the hashing function, when we implement that, how complicated is it? Like just like multiply with this number, or
no? You don't really implement it. Somebody's done it for you. There's one called Bcrypt, which I really like, or I don't know that I even like it. I just know that I've used it, and a lot of people seem to link to it and use it. So hopefully it's good. But basically you just say, you get Bcrypt, there's some number of salting rounds, so maybe the more you salt, I actually don't know how this works, the more secure it is. But so here's someone's plain text password, and then some other plain text password, and you basically just say, go generate the hash for this password, and it goes and does it. And then there's another thing later where you can say, okay, here's the hash, here's the plain text password again, are these things the same? So it's doing those two steps for you, right? Gives you the thing to put in the database, and then once you have that thing and you've got the password again next time, it lets you compare those two things. And it does all the work for you, and you don't have to know how to even do long division, like me. Cool. Another kind of encryption is two-way encryption. And Node has something built in for this. But basically, here's one way to set it up. You get the crypto built-in Node module, and you tell it what kind of encryption you want to do, and then here's the thing that we're encrypting, and you can create an encrypt and a decrypt function, and it's doing stuff in there that I'm sure there's a number of blog posts that would describe better than I could describe. I've used encryption a little bit, but I'm just standing on the shoulders of people who actually understand how that stuff works. And if I was ever doing something that was like mission critical for a company or like absolutely had to be hack proof, like I would consult with a security specialist to make sure that we were doing something, that we're doing everything and had all our bases covered there.
Well, I've been to this conference once, and they said you need quantum computers to make it really, really encrypted. Otherwise, you know, there's always people that can break your encryption.
I thought it was the opposite. I mean, I don't think we have working quantum computers at the moment, but I think that's the scare about encryption, is that encryption only works because the math you'd have to do, the work you'd have to do to decrypt and to get the information that's encrypted without the special information would cost so much. It's just cost prohibitive, right? So like the NSA or whoever has a fuck ton of money who can build a 10 million machine supercomputer cluster or whatever, like they're going to have the horsepower to decrypt your HTTPS session to your bank if they want to, but how much is it going to cost them? Thousands of dollars worth of electricity, hundreds of dollars, right? And so the scare about quantum computing is that we'll be able to do this hard work with a relatively inexpensive amount of electricity. So then suddenly all this encryption that's happening today, which is cost thousands of dollars to break, will cost dollars to break. And therefore governments and whatnot will have the ability to sort of decrypt everything that you've got in your, you know, encrypted hard drive or whatever without paying too much money. I think that's the fear of quantum machines just showing up and working real fast, is that we won't have security around our data anymore. Now, I don't know that I'm sure quantum computing will bring some new form of encryption that gets up to that level of cost, prohibitive decryption.
Yeah, because there was actually a quantum computer in there. It was in San Francisco, and they said it needs to be in like really cold environments.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know the exact.
Yeah.
But that's another thing.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. I don't know tons about it. Yeah, but the stuff you're gonna have to know how to do is one-way hashing algorithms, and then just general encryption and decryption. And then there's stuff for you to know about how SSH works in terms of encryption. So SSH is a way to securely get access to another computer. So if I wanted to log into your laptop from my laptop and run a command, I would probably want to connect to your laptop via an SSH secure connection. And then so how that would work is I'd give you my public key, and then you would say my public key has access to your machine, and then I would use my private key to encrypt information, and you would use my public key to decrypt it. So there's some stuff to know there around connecting from machine to machine, and how, so GitHub does this too. If you want to authenticate to GitHub, one way to do it is to use SSH keys. So, and we want to read about how those work. All right, you want to do that code refactoring?
Sure.
Did you send it to me?
I did. I sent you a link to to my GitHub.
To the open a pull request?
Yeah, so if you slide down, you'll see the changes I made to the polls. I guess you can do side by side of things.
Can I comment on my own thing? Cool. And you just want, what do you want? You just want to look at the whole file as it is, or just these changes?
If we could look at this side by side, so I've refactored it along with Monica as much as I think we can, but I also think that I'm missing something where I could do better than what's there too. Like,
okay, let's look at it. So here's your most recent version.
right.
This one?
Yeah, I believe, yes, that's the most recent.
All right.
And I was trying to get that, let's see, that filtered line, trying to see if there was any way that I could still do the comparison. Let's see. Yeah, because the filter takes a callback that returns a boolean, and so I was trying to figure out how to. I guess, is there any way I can shorten that comparison line? Actually, thank
Here.
I love it. No, I see it.
So this goes through all your clients and finds the ones with that are the company's lowercase matches the lowercase query, and then you go through each matching client and you're pushing in
Just those parts of the object. The ID company and phone without the rest of the data.
got it. But then you're sorting inside the for each. So what you really want is, this is a one-to-one thing. So what you want is query results equals matching clients map, and then just map to this object.
Oh.
So you can even do that. This is probably the easiest way to write, or the most clear way to write this. So now you have query results. And so are you you're sorting by...
I'm comparing the one company to the next.
Right, so you could do this, but you could also just return the result of the sort.
Will it be shorter, Jared, if you just leave ID, company, and phone, and without the client ID? If you just return actually the keys, I think it would give you that too, right?
Oh, just the keys?
Yeah.
Well, no, because the way you're logging here, what do you mean just the keys?
If you just leave ID, company, and phone, I think it will return. If you just return ID, comma, company, comma, phone, it will give you
No, because these aren't local variables. You could use this. You could do like...
I'll be specific there.
Well, you could pull these out in the arguments, and then this would work.
Oh, sure.
But you'd have to pull them off into local variables. That's a little fancy, right? Because this is like, this is saying the first argument is the client, but from the client, I don't even want that thing. I just want off of it the ID, company, and phone. Let's see if this... I can't test this thing, but my guess is it's not logging exactly right, because you're supposed to log this thing as JSON.
Oh, well, I had working code. It was fine.
It's probably not exactly right. Because if we look at this thing, it's the company search thing.
And you could also send this to me, and I can run it. And
Sure. What's the module called again?
what's that?
Is it the 321 context?
No, this one here is the search by. This is off the Days Interview 2. Search by company.
Oh, this is. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you the answer to this.
Well, no, I don't. I had working code to begin with. I just looked at a way of refactoring it. So
I thought this was the 321 context thing, which is why I misunderstood.
Okay, got it.
Because that's different.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Well, here, you can have this.
Let me see if that, because that's really it. I was just trying to clean the code up because my explanation was getting lengthy for the old code that I had,
Sure.
so that I could get to the point a little bit clearer.
Well, if you want fancy code, this is super fancy. There you go.
Oh, whoa.
Filter, and then map, and then sort.
You didn't see where I started. It was pretty big, but I was trying to make sense to myself, and then eventually I couldn't explain it to other people. So. Yeah.
There you go.
Would you recommend doing that when you can, as opposed to storing something in a variable and then doing a dot map and then storing that in a variable and doing a dot sort?
I mean, it's up to you. If it was me, I'd write it this way because I don't need those variables, right? I'm not using them for anything else. They're just transitional. And not everything is chainable, but array methods are pretty good where you can say, I've got an array, I want to get a subset of them, and then I want to turn those into something else, and then I want to sort those. Like, that's a chainable ABC thing. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, what's next on our list?
Thank you, Derek.
Editor magic. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I used Atom for a long time, but it started lagging, so I switched to VS Code. And a lot of key bindings are different on VS Code, so I don't know.
VS Code has Sublime key bindings. I know because I thought about switching to it. I can't use Atom because it's too slow too.
Yeah.
But I can tell you the weird key stuff I do. The number one thing is Command D. So if you select, so like, let's say I wanted to, well, how can we do this? Like, let's say I had, something like this, and I wanted to turn this into a hash, and I wanted to have these be the keys, right? Command D will take whatever you have selected and find the next one and select it as well. So then I can drop down here, and then you can do, let's see if this helps.
What do you mean find the next one?
Yeah, so like the next one, so const, if I wanted all the consts.
Yeah, but weren't you just doing first name, last name?
No, I was doing comma space. And then that's the next comma space, and that's the next comma space.
Couldn't see. Gotcha.
And then I hit return, and then I do Control Shift up to get that next line, although I did it too many times. So Control Shift up and down will just give you multiple cursors. Yeah. So then I indent, I command right and left to get to the beginning and the end of the line. Colon, some string, comma, you know what I mean? And so
Control Shift up.
Control Shift up and down, yeah. So now same thing, if I wanted to go back and get all the keys, I could select colon space, left arrow, Option Shift left arrow to select the word, and then I could like paste this down here, Control Shift up, comma, Command J, like there's a bunch of different ways you can. Command J is join all lines. So if I want these all on the same line, Command J will put them on the same line. I can also, you know, put a comma and then Command J or whatever.
There's a multiple cursor you can also do if you command click on one.
Yeah, so I can command and double click, or you can command and single click if you want to do it by hand. Option left and right goes one word. Command left and right goes to the beginning and the end of the line. These are good. Command enter gives you a new line no matter where you are. Command shift enter no matter where you are in a line. Gives you a new one above it.
There's a command shift D if you want to.
Well, I can't take notes that fast.
I know. Well, this is being recorded, so you can watch it later. Yeah, Command Shift D duplicates a line. Copy anywhere you're on a line. If I just go here and do copy and come down here and do paste, you don't have to select the line. You can just copy the whole line and paste it. It pastes it above for some reason.
If you do the Command D to select more of the same, what if you go too far? Is it Command Shift D, like go back?
No, I don't think there's an undo. There is a way to say like I can do Command D and then I can do Command K, Command D, and it'll like skip this one. So let's say I had a bunch of them, like let's say I wanted to select all these arrows except this second one, right? So I select the arrow, I do Command D, Command KD, Command D, and then now I've got, so you can kind of skip them. I use that sometimes. Like for example, if I was like, I wanted to select all these commas, right? D, D, K, D, D, and then you can kind of skip the pattern you don't want or skip the match you don't want.
This is how I would have done it.
I know that is Control Command G, which select everything.
Control Command G. What does that do?
It'll select everything. All the same.
Oh yeah, I didn't know about that one. That's rad. Control Command G. I've wanted that one because I've found myself going like, just waiting them. So that's cool. Thank you. Control Command G. I'm into it. All right. I can't think of any other editor magic. I mean, every editor, pretty much Command T, will let you open any other file and fuzzy match. So like, you know, if I wanted to open index HTML, Command T, INHT, right? It like fuzzy matches. It fuzzy matches the IN and the HT. That's like the best way to get around. I almost never come over here and click a file. I'm usually just whatever place I want to go is Command T to get around.
Does that work in VS Code as well?
I think so. If it doesn't, I'm sure that there's some way to make that work. Every editor has and needs that fuzzy jump around. Cool. Any other questions for 10 minutes left of this?
Well, if we have time, I can come up with questions.
I can make up answers.
Well, let's talk about the CSS grid, because there's like loads and other flexbox in the curriculum. Do we need to know it really well, because now we can just use CSS grid?
It depends. Can I use .com? So CSS Grid works in all of these browsers. IE is the old versions of the old Internet Explorer browser. Edge is the new one. In the latest version, it seems to work, but there's still a little bit of non-support going on here. They say there's 66% adoption of this CSS Grid thing. So it depends on what kind of projects you're working for and what requirements the company has for browser compatibility as to whether or not you can use CSS Grid. You should still learn how to position things with floats in case you need to. See, Flexbox is much more supported than this. Flexbox is 83%. I think we can use Flexbox everywhere. There's a lot of green here. So definitely learn Flexbox. The grid thing is new and awesome, and it will probably be the new way, but I think we need a little bit more time, again, depending on who you work for and what technologies or what browsers they need to support. So like I think Google and I assume LinkedIn still support Internet Explorer 11. I have no idea. But if you did, then you couldn't use CSS Grid to do your layouts there.
But if it's like a coding challenge here in the phase 1, we can use CSS Grid without any problem.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions?
Can you look at the browser, find out what browser the person's using? If you're like Grid's not supported, be like, hey.
So what you're talking about is feature detection. And you can do that. There are some cool things around feature detection. What is it called? CanHas.js, I think. No, what is that? What's that feature detection library called? Modernizer. So this is a cool thing. I'm not sure how much we need this anymore, but this is like a, here we go. So this is a ton of optional, like you sort of build your own version of this library. And so let's say we wanted to find out whether or not we could use the battery API. So we add this to this Modernizer bundle, and now we will be, when this JavaScript runs and we try to run this super early in the page load time, we detect whether these features exist. So a better example than the battery API might be Grid. So CSS Grid, we can add this to the bundle, and this is going to tell us, where does this go? Oh, that's just the white paper. This is now going to allow us to detect, both in JavaScript and in CSS, whether or not Grid is supported in this browser. So we'll be able to say things like, and the way this works in JS is there's a global variable where you just say like modernizer.grid or whatever, and that's either true or false as to whether that feature exists. And then in CSS, they'll optionally put either something like a grid or a no grid class name on the HTML element. So then in your CSS, you can do things like, you can say like, okay, my page content uses grid. However that works, right? I have no idea how grid works, right? Huh?
Display grid.
Okay, great. So then we can say my page content is display grid, but then we can actually say if HTML has, you know, grid yes on it, then it's display grid. Otherwise, if it's grid no, and these aren't the right class names, but it's basically like this, right? Then we're going to say, okay, we display Flexbox, but actually that's only if there's Flexbox supported, right? So we can start to say like, I always want to use the latest styling thing, but I want to fall back to something that's good enough if this browser doesn't support it. And so you can kind of get the best of both worlds by basically programming two versions and turning one on or off. So that's how I would recommend detection of features is something like a modernizer.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right, let's call it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.